Hello and welcome to Ascension Podcasts. I am Selina. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and my weekly self-help and relationship podcasts can be downloaded on Apple iTunes and Podbean. Follow the links below the video. Today's guest is James Quinn. He is a IEMT and hypnotherapist and psychotherapist. Is that right? You do various therapies?
Yeah, hypnotherapy, eye movement. Yeah, okay. Integral eye movement therapy.
Okay, so just briefly, just tell us again, because I know you came on the last show, what you do. What do you do in regards to these therapies? What is it exactly you do? Can you tell us?
Yeah, so okay, so I trained as a hypnotherapist, and basically people will contact me with regard to solving either it can be emotional issues, or they might be doing behaviours that they don't want to do. For example, behaviours could come in the class of addictions. A common thing for hypnotherapists is people come to you for stop smoking. So behaviourally, that's a kind of common thing. Weight loss is another issue that people come to me for. So they might find themselves, binge eating, and they don't want to do it, and they can't control those behaviours. So that's kind of one side of things. And the other side is emotional issues. It can be a whole range of things, really, from they can't forget an ex to phobia of driving, or heights. Phobias are a common thing. Anxiety disorders. So a whole range of things, really. And obviously I use hypnosis as one of the tools in the toolbox.
Can you tell us what is hypnotherapy? What is it? Can you explain that for people that don't understand it?
Exactly, yeah, sure. So I think the simplest way to explain it is when we go to sleep, there's a point between being awake and being asleep, where your mind starts to, conscious mind starts to kind of wind down, and then we're then more in touch with our unconscious mind. So that point of between awake and between sleep, either when you're going to sleep at night or you're waking up first thing in the morning, when you're really close to your unconscious mind. And in these sort of states, we can be really quite close to our creativity and get kind of ideas, and but it's really the conscious mind has started to wind down. So we induce that state. I mean, it can be similar to a state of meditation, where you're focusing internally, really. So you're going into an inner state, and we can use hypnosis to then gain access to that other part of a mind, really, the unconscious mind that holds all memories, emotions. Can access memories. We can access where traumas come from. And the other side of the hypnosis is where you can actually give suggestions to the unconscious mind. I think everyone's aware of this whole stage hypnosis thing, where a hypnotist will get people on stage, they'll put them into a state of trance, and then make them do crazy things.
Is that real though? Is it acting?
Yeah, it is real. It is real. Yeah. You can do that. Obviously, someone has to be a good hypnotic subject. For therapeutic purposes, it's a little bit different. There's a kind of different thing going on stage. If someone is on stage being a hypnotic subject, they're really primed to perform as well. So there's a whole compliance thing that's built into that kind of then helps people to act out crazy things. So it's a little bit different. But what you're doing is when you get someone into that state, you're suspending the kind of conscious barrier. So then you can give suggestions directly to the unconscious mind, and then they'll act out those. But for therapeutic purposes, it doesn't really. It works a little bit differently. You can use that as part of the therapy, but in itself, it doesn't. It's not the full picture, because you can't really, for long-term change, just giving suggestions to the unconscious is not necessarily enough. If I think of it more like, in a way, if you've got like a program running in your unconscious that is causing you to do certain things that you don't want to be doing, you kind of have to uninstall that first. And so you uninstall the old programming before putting the new programming in. So that's kind of one, I kind of think of it a little bit like that. So if someone's got beliefs in their unconscious mind, for example, that could have been instilled from way back in the past, that's causing, fears, phobias, or anxieties, then it's important to get rid of those first. And then afterwards, you can give positive suggestions, and so the role of the hypnosis in with the positive suggestions kind of comes afterwards. You can kind of build person's self-esteem afterwards with giving them direct suggestions.
Okay, like a computer program, you remove the old program and you
kind of software,
and then you update it. You put a new sort of type of software in there.
Yeah, that's kind of a good, for me, that's a good kind of analogy that kind of works when I'm working with people.
And how does that help people overcome phobias and addictions, the hypnotherapy? What sort of techniques do you use when you take people into deep hypnosis?
So phobias can be caused in a number of different ways. I mean, sometimes phobias can be caused very quickly by a single event in time. It might be one event in time years ago that then somehow triggered that. Could be a shock event that triggered that phobia, or it could be learnt behavior from a parent, or so say for example someone's mother was scared of spiders, and every time your mum saw a spider, she got scared. Then that can then become a learnt behavior. All spiders are something that are to be scared of. So then that becomes a belief that's created. But there's a process in hypnotherapy that you can. It's called the rewind technique. Basically, what you're doing, you're putting someone into a light trance. Doesn't have to be a deep trance. If they can remember the first incident, if, say for example, someone remembers, oh yeah, I know when I learned, when I first became phobic of spiders, it was that incident way back. If they can remember it, then you can put them into a light trance, and you just basically get them to imagine they're sitting in a cinema, and you get them to run the movie, run it as a movie. But there's several ways that we experience trauma. So when someone is phobic of something, they're basically reliving an event back in time as if they're actually there. So one of the ways that you can treat that is that you can get them to separate from themselves, so then they become the observer rather than the experiencer. So this is quite a useful method, so that they can then watch it on a screen, on a cinema screen in front of them as an observer. So then they're distanced from the actual original memory. So then what you're doing is, because if you think about it, there every time they, I'm using spiders as an example because it's kind of simple example. Every time they see a spider, they then reliving that event back in time. And it's like a little movie that's running, and it has a distinct beginning and end point, and it's kind of a set pattern. That little movie happens every time they see a spider, and what you're doing is you're then taking that. It's the way they've coded the information in their brain. You're then recoding it, so you change it. So you might run it forwards and get them to then observe it as an observer, dissociated from their body. You might turn it into black and white, so they see it as a black and white movie. And then you can get them to step into the movie, but then run it backwards. So
this can be used not just for phobias and addictions, but also behavior patterns, relationship patterns. That would work a little bit differently. So this really works for emotional states. So this process works for anything that is triggering an emotion. Okay. You're going back to the first time the emotion got created. It's addressing the question: how did the person originally learn to feel this feeling? So that's really addressing the feelings. Addictions and behaviours are often as a result of an emotion. Okay. They're not the root cause.
They're not necessarily.
The addiction behaviour is the result.
Yeah. So often, I mean, not always, but in a lot of cases, any kind of addictive behaviour can be an avoidance strategy, a way to avoid feeling something. So when if I'm working with someone that's asking for kind of behavioural change, where they want to change a behaviour, it could be binge eating, it could be smoking. I go back to I first of all try to find out, okay, is there an emotion that's driving this behaviour? Is it, what is the emotion? Is it they're trying to avoid something? And it isn't always the case. Sometimes someone starts smoking because, they were a teenager and all their friends were. So there isn't necessarily, so then if there isn't an emotional driver, then I kind of look at it a little bit differently. So for example, smoking, let's take smoking as an example. It's, it's a behavioural thing. They may have started smoking because their friends were doing it, but then in the present moment they might be doing it because they're stressed. For example, every time they get stressed, I'll go and have a cigarette. I'll go and take a break and have a cigarette. So then I look at, okay, so what are other strategies that we could use to deal with the stress? It's often work. Smoke. I have had a lot of smokers come to me that experience stress at work. They have a stressful job and they just need a break. Like, I need a break, I'll go and have a cigarette. So it's almost like the cigarette is just the excuse to have the break. So it's like, well, actually, do you need the cigarette, or is it just you do need the break? So what does it actually really need? So with things like this, sometimes it's just finding out, okay, what is it you're actually after? Is it just the break, or is it just you just want to take 5 minutes to take a break from the stress? The cigarette, it might not be the cigarette at all. The cigarette might just be the excuse, but somehow they've associated the cigarette with taking a break. So it can be about breaking associations. And obviously you can use hypnosis for this kind of thing as well. You can get them to create a new identity for themselves as a non-smoker. Okay, what would the non-smoker identity be? And you can create that as an identity and get them to vividly imagine that, and get them to imagine doing something different instead of smoking. And obviously you can use hypnosis. Hypnosis is great for this because you're kind of embedding it directly in the unconscious. So you can use you can get them use the conscious mind and the conscious to work together for the common goal kind of thing.
Okay.
So that's kind of how it works with, you know, how I use hypnosis to work with those two things, really.
Can I ask, what is past life regressions? This is something else you do. It's part of the hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
It's past life regression therapy.
Yeah.
What is it exactly, and how does it help people?
Okay. Yeah. So past life regression is, okay, so it's the idea that we've all lived before in a past life. So it's you know, we're all reincarnated. So sometimes people will come to me specifically for this if they know about it. People that are curious about past lives, someone with a spiritual angle that want to know about past lives.
Can I ask a question about past lives?
Yeah.
Is it that from the beginning of time, everything, all the lives are mapped from start to finish because it's already happened, and it's all because with the reincarnation, so it's already happened and our lives are all mapped like millions of years ahead, thousands of years ahead. So do we choose the lives? I kind of know the answer of what I've been shown, but for you, what's your takes, your scientific, do we choose each life with the past lives, or is it just already mapped and we just follow a map in the story of on Earth, it's called?
Are you saying, do you mean that the lives are pre-planned?
Yeah, all of them. Everybody's interlinked. Everybody from the moment of the beginning of the Earth, beginning of time, even. And can you have past lives on other Earths and other planets and other worlds?
Okay.
Or
wow,
do we reincarnate on other? That's what I mean. Is it all kind of just mapped, or do we choose individually, and do we have then free will of what we're going to come in as?
Right.
Or is it all mapped?
Okay. That's a big question, right?
Yeah, you can answer it.
I mean, okay, I could answer it from what I think,
okay,
and my opinion. But I'm not sure if I think really most of this, I mean, because I'm coming of it working from doing past life regressions and doing between life regressions.
I'll ask you about that in a minute.
Okay. Yeah. So
forget that between lives for now. Just talk about past lives, and do they follow a map, or do we choose them individually?
I mean, I can't really answer that without talking about between lives.
Oh, okay, sure.
Because a lot of the whole planning, the planning of the life you're going to take on next, a lot of those decisions are made between lifetimes.
Is it a decision, or do we just get given it, or is it all mapped and then we decide where we want to fit in the map?
Right. Okay, so I'll answer this with between lives that I've done. And okay, so between
sure. So I'll just
I need to explain what between lives.
Tell us about just explain. Tell us about life between lives.
Yeah. So okay, so we've got past lives, which is the lifetimes we've lived before, and we can use hypnosis to access those.
Yeah.
So that's what past life regression is. So we're using hypnosis to access the previous lifetimes, but there's also a way to access the time between lifetimes, and this is called life between lives. Sorry, my little dog is here.
Oh, it's the dog this time. It's the cat. Oh, that's so cute. Okay.
She was wanting to jump up, so I've had to. So life between lives is that place between the lifetimes. So when we leave one life, we then have got a place, like a spiritual realm, if you like.
The astral plane.
The astral
we're
plane,
on the physical plane.
Yeah.
The astral plane is when we pass to the spirit world.
Yeah. And it's at this point where there's communication with higher beings.
Beings of light. I was going to ask you
Of
about
light.
that.
They
Can
can
you
be
tell us
called.
about the beings?
Yeah.
Tell us quickly about, just briefly,
Yeah.
about beings of light, so we know.
And I mean, a lot of this work comes from Michael Newton, who made this very popular. He wrote some books on it, like Journey of Souls, Destiny of Souls. Hold on, I think I've got a little book here. This guy, that's
okay.
one of his books, Destiny of Souls. He did Journey of Souls. So anyone that's interested in this whole life between lives thing, this guy did the most amount. He did thousands of regressions, and he mapped out the whole realm.
Really?
And he quite scientifically went, did lots of regressions independently, and what he found out was that most experiences were similar. So even people that didn't really even believe in it, or they took them into that realm. So he kind of mapped out the whole realm, and there was some common kind of themes where someone would finish one lifetime and then go to a place where they would select where the new life was going to be selected, where the choice of body, the choice of purpose, and sometimes that was discussed with their guides or the beings of light. Sometimes it would be a collaborative thing, but the beings of light would often make the suggestion: you should do this. You should take this life next. This is what you should be working on. So they would seem to be the higher beings of light. Would seem to be suggesting certain lives to be led next.
Pathways.
Yeah.
Pathways, and you incarnate with
some were told this is what you're doing next.
And you incarnate with soul families and soul groups in certain lives to learn certain lessons.
Yeah, exactly. So for people that don't know about this, the people you know in this life, it could be friends, it could be family. The idea is that you will meet them in successive lives. So you've had past lives with them, and they'll be part of what you can call your soul group. So the idea is that we're all on a journey, learning through successive lives, learning new different things. Each life that you might choose to incarnate in, you have a different purpose.
It's not all mapped. It's mapped, but there's turning points, isn't there? Because if they're choosing certain lives and to fulfill certain karmas and to learn certain lessons or to break certain cycles with people.
People. Yeah, exactly.
There are turning points, and you can help. So how do you help people with that, to access those turning points? Or because what's happened in a previous life could affect what's happened happening now in the current life. So how does that work? How do you help them to access that and affect the outcome? So the outcome there, and then the outcome here.
Well, quite often people aren't aware of the turning points in their current life, are they?
No,
they might not have an awareness of it.
Missing the turning points, I say.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's a whole awareness thing, because we have, in a way, we have an awareness here in the physical world that is kind of bound by what we see and do. So we're not always aware of things from that perspective. Yet when you take, say for example, you take someone to a past life, and I mean, I suppose we should say, why would you want to take someone to a past life?
Yeah, why?
And I mean, it can be, I mean, a common thing that I've had with people is they'll come to me and they're confused about, why is this person in my life, or what is the relationship I've got with this person? Why is there always been a problem with this relationship? And it could be a friend, it could be a family member. So they want to discover, is there a deeper meaning to that relationship? So then when we explore a past life, they can discover that there was an interplay there with the same person. And they could look, for example, someone might be a bit victim in this life, but in a previous life it might have been the opposite way around.
Oh, okay.
So then they're
role reversal.
There can be role reversals. Well, they might just be learning together. That person might be teaching them something that they need to know.
Or
sometimes the harshest,
or a continuum of what's the less something like they were a victim, abuser, whatever, they couldn't get away in the past life, so it continues into this life, especially with marriages. That's
a good example.
Or marriages, they continue. It's a continuation.
Exactly.
And then they have the opportunity again, the turning points to leave in this life.
That's it. Yeah, but they might not have had that. They might have had the opportunity in a past life, but they weren't maybe evolved enough to take the opportunity. They might have been too scared to run away, and then they ended up getting killed instead. Whereas
dramatic.
I mean, that's kind of what it's. Yeah, it does happen.
You read it in the news, don't you? You see all these horror stories, and you think, gosh, you wonder if that was a karmic soul connection or contract, or what it was. They couldn't get away, and it's fascinating stuff.
But then in this life, the person may have had more ability to get away. So if you take someone into a past life, it's really quite important to get them to see the parallels between that past life and this life. I mean, it might not necessarily be that. It could be, if I take another example, okay, everyone, if someone goes into a situation like, I'll take an example, like public speaking. Right? They go into a situation, but every time they go in to do public speaking, they get anxiety. Now, someone might not necessarily come to want to do past life regression to solve that problem, but they might. But they might discover that so we might explore a past life, and then something completely separate might come up, like they're going into battle as a soldier, completely unrelated, and then they die, and they or it might be something to do with, if they open their mouth, they'll die. If they speak, it could be to do with telling the truth. It could be to do with communicating something, whereas they said something, they told something, and they got executed or something. So then there might be a fear of speaking because of that. So then the parallel there would be, okay, so they're going into doing public speaking. They think on a deep level that they're going into war. So of course they're going to have anxiety. So this is a little bit similar to another kind of work I do, which is using metaphor. So it's similar. It's very similar to. So I could in a different way. I might ask someone, if we're talking about public speaking, I could say to them, okay, so when you go and do public speaking, what is that like for you? And they might say, it just feels like I'm going into a battle.
So that's the metaphor. That's not necessarily a past life. It could be a past life.
It could be a past life.
If it isn't, it doesn't matter, because it's a metaphor, and you can work with that and change that metaphor. And then tell us how you change the outcome. So if you change the outcome in the past life or in the metaphor, how does that affect the present for the client, for the patient? Okay, so with the past life, there's, it depends on how the trauma was created, how it was created. So if it's something that happens, well, okay, a common thing will be the death scene. So it's what thoughts and feelings they carry over during death. And when they look, so this is one of the questions I asked them in the past life regression, is what thoughts and feelings are you having when you're looking back on that life? So that then when they die in that life, they're the thoughts, feelings and beliefs that they're taking forward, perhaps into the current life at some level. So they're then carrying that forward.
So then what we can do, there's different ways that then you can work on healing that. But fundamentally what you have to do is you need to resolve it, resolve those emotions, heal the emotions. So you can do that by taking them into the between life place, and then you can get them to look at it from a different perspective, from more of a spiritual perspective. So they're not in that life, but looking back on it with now a kind of their current knowledge. So if knowing what you know now, and in this, you know, spiritual place, looking back, what things were you overlooking? What qualities did you have that you weren't using, or what qualities would have been useful back then? And then you can, there's in a way, what you can do, you can rerun that life with those new qualities. So it's really about finding what was missing for that person in that life, and it could be attributes and qualities, and where can we get those qualities from? And then you basically find those places, you work on getting those qualities and imbuing that character with those qualities, so that they experience that life differently. Of course, you're changing it, but then so it's almost like you're changing the memory of the past life. But in doing so, you're kind of changing the outcome. And then you're getting to see it differently, or you might. There's a whole way of doing this. I mean, suppose there was a conflict with someone, and that person lost the conflict and lost their life. Okay, what did they need during that conflict that would have got them out? It might have been it could have been something like simply as having the courage to escape, or the courage to run away instead of argue. It could have been a whole host of different things. Can
I ask a question about feminine and masculine polarities? So if you're a man, you can have lots of lives as a man, lots of lives as a woman.
Yeah.
Do people, the soul, before it goes in the body, what polarity is it? Does it have an overall male or female polarity, or is it neutral? And then it's the earth experience that gives you the gender, the polarity of the gender.
I mean, I think personally it is, I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I think it's probably the earth experience that gives the polarity. I don't think we're necessarily male or female. Okay. In spirit,
as a soul. Okay.
I think we have aspects of both.
Yeah.
And
yin yang.
And depending on whether you incarnate as a male or a female, then those aspects of both will come out anyway, but more so if you'll have more male. If you incarnate as a male, then you'll have more male characteristics than female, and vice versa. But we still have both, don't we? I mean, male and females have both characteristics within us. We have male and female character traits within all of us. It's just that we might have more ability to access the male if we're a male, and the better ability to access the female if we're female.
It's interesting stuff, because it means that it's an earth experience, and then when we pass to spirit, the spirit world, that isn't an earth experience. We don't have an earthly body. So what are we, like a light being, or and there's different dimensions, isn't there? There's lots of different levels.
Of that. Yeah, exactly.
That's another podcast. Okay.
Goes deep, right?
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. I just wanted to ask, with the past lives, how can you tell if what people are remembering are real or imaginary past lives? How do you know? I mean, it probably doesn't matter from a therapeutic metaphor perspective.
You know what? I think the only way you can really tell is if you do it, if you work on getting solid evidence in the past life. Historical. I think you can't really tell. If you did it, if I if I wasn't doing it for therapeutic reasons, and I was doing it for research, then I could start asking questions. Okay, can you name streets? Can you name, what's your first and last name? Now, apparently, it's much easier to do this if the past life is a male.
Why is that?
Than female, because of records.
Records, of course.
Records, yeah. So, but it's quite difficult to actually know for sure with past life regression. You'd have to get specific names, dates, places, and then you'd have to go and do research on this. I'm not sure if anyone has actually spent time. It would be interesting to do.
Oh, you can do
I'm not
it.
sure if anyone. It's enough to do. I mean, but it would be interesting, but it would take a lot. It would take a lot of work. You'd have to get a lot of case studies, and then you'd have to go back and get the evidence. And of course, then you'd have to rule out certain things that information couldn't have been seen elsewhere on TV or. So
what you could do is also do the regressions on soul groups or family groups or people that know each other, and see if the historical facts, they've been in the same lives or same time in history and same facts. Do you see if you get people have the same life and they're giving you the same name, same facts? That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
True. Yeah. But
I don't think anyone's done. There's not many people have done that.
That might not necessarily be enough, though, because there's unconscious communication between people.
Oh, really?
I mean, when I was training in hypnotherapy, we played this game, hide and seek, in hypnosis. So we'd have you'd have a partner. We were both put into trance, into hypnosis, and one person would go and hide in a place of their imagination. So they would choose a place in their imagination to go and hide, an imaginary place. And then the other person's job, the partner's job, was to work out where they are, was to find them. So in hypnosis, they try and get some images or scenes about where they might be. And I did this, and it was the person I hid in King Kong, the film King Kong, where King Kong lived on that big mountain top overlooking the big forest in there's a little place, but it's like overlooking in a forest, but on a top of a mountain. That's where I hid.
Okay.
And so when we both came out of trance, the partner that I was working with described it very, very accurately. So somehow he was able to see where I was hiding.
So telepathy and remote viewing.
Yeah.
Telepathic remote viewing into your mind.
So if this is a thing,
as friends, or you knew each other well. Okay, so maybe
if this is a phenomena
in mind.
Yeah. So if that's an actual phenomena, then if you get groups of people when you take them onto separate past lives, you can't really guarantee that isn't then influencing the results. It's a very difficult thing to.
Big experiment, then you'd have to.
Yeah, it's quite difficult to.
People different.
I think we were talking about evidence for past lives, weren't we?
Yes, whether it's real or not. Imagine.
Yeah. You know what? I think the best evidence for this doesn't come from hypnosis at all. I think it comes from these stories about young children remembering their past lives. I think there's some TV documentaries or Netflix documentaries on this, and I've read stuff in the past about this, where it could be little villages in India and Asia where young children remember their previous existence, and they actually go and visit them, and they can and they recognize the people, and so there's quite a few of these stories, and I think that's quite convincing. I mean, how can you explain that? They're in a small village. They're not really, and small children knowing details about things that they couldn't possibly know. So there's quite a few of those stories, and I think that's probably the most convincing evidence I've seen of the reality.
And what sort of visions and information do patients tell you about when they do life between lives? So this is life between lives, not past lives.
Yeah.
What sort of information are they telling you that you've heard various things? Okay,
so normally someone will want to do a life between lives to find deeper understandings about their current life. They might want to discover why they've got this life, why they chose this life, why they chose their parents, key people in their life, what importance those key people are. So it's really about perspective. They tend to get a perspective. I mean, a big thing about the between life regressions are the meeting with the beings of light. So that is the most profound for people that experience this, is that they can get information about their current life, so it's not necessarily visions, but insight, real deep insight about their current life. For example, if someone's had a life of suffering, and they'll get an insight about why did they have that life of suffering. I mean, I had happened recently. So I had a client that had a between life regression, and his issue is he couldn't sleep, suffering from insomnia. And I tried lots of different traditional ways to work with that insomnia, eye movement therapy, hypnosis, and couldn't really get much of a result with him. So I thought, well, maybe this is a past life issue. So started exploring that, discovered it wasn't a past life issue. So we ended up taking him into this spiritual place where he had access to his guides and between life. And it's there where he got insights from his guides. I call them guides, beings of light, whatever you want to call them. That the reason he can't sleep, the main reason, is because he's finding it difficult to adjust to being human, because he's not originally from here. He's incarnated on the earth, but this is not usual for him. He's from somewhere else, and he was finding it difficult to adjust to being human. So that was his insight. But also,
is that an identity? Could that be an non-human identity issue?
Yeah.
From trauma, yeah. Or how do you know? Or is it actually to do with living on another planet? How do you know the difference? Is there a way of telling?
You can't know for sure, but okay. the thing is when you get someone into that state, they're accessing something on a different level, and in my experience, it's real that they're especially when I mean, especially if they start channeling those guides and they start speaking from them, and then they get profound information that's really helpful for them. So he ended up getting very good insights about his life and about why those things had happened to him. So he ended up having a very positive perspective on all of those experiences that were difficult. So up to that point, he looked at his life as a disaster. So he was looking back on all of those events that people had done to him as a disaster. But then after that, he saw them from a different perspective. So he had a more positive outlook. So this is what I find with the between life regression, is that someone can have end up with a very positive outlook on their life, even though, you know, normally they would look at their life very bleakly. It can look very bleak, yet they'll get a different angle on it that can be really helpful. You know, for him, he's been sent here to learn about certain things, and now he has an experience of those things that he can then teach to other people. So it is put him into a more empowered state, where his experience, he's using those experiences as a positive, and he now wants to help other people who have similar experiences. So you know, that can only be a good thing, right?
Okay.
But the visions, yes. So in
they all go somewhere. They all go somewhere after they die, and then, or before they're born. Before they're born, they go somewhere. You said a special place to choose their life.
Yeah, yeah.
What are their patients' experiences of that? What do they say to you?
Yeah. So when I take someone to between life place, depending on what they're asking to do, there might be different places within that they travel to. I mean, in my experience, I mean, I can talk about my experience, that when I was taken into that, I felt like I was traveling. And I think you asked about the soul group earlier. That was the first thing that I saw. I saw lights. I saw like a collection of lights.
This is your
this is my experience. Okay. Yeah. So I saw a collection of lights that then, but it was really like traveling. It was almost like traveling through space.
Okay. And
that's what it felt like for me.
4 hours long to do this journey. Yeah.
It can be 3 to 4 hours long. Okay.
Yeah. You saw lights.
It was lights that then were my soul group. They were people. Yeah. And they were people in my current life, or some of them I wasn't aware of, that I didn't know in this life, but they were all part of my soul group. So we were working together towards a collective, you know, towards a goal. So we're all helping each other evolve in some way. Okay. So that was one place. Then there's another place in this realm, the Akashic Records, which can be like a library.
My favourite place, right? See the future, yeah.
And people perceive this in different ways. Yeah. Some people perceive it actually like a library, where they open books.
Yeah.
And they can access part. Yeah.
Portal of information where you can hear, because I hear. Yeah. I can hear what's coming in, or taste it, smell it, or see it. So it's like a 3-dimensional library portal of what's going to happen.
Yeah, but there's no one way that people experience. Everyone experiences things differently. I think everyone has their own experience.
Yeah.
And I think really what's happening when we access that, we're accessing it through our worldly experience in a way as well. So I think it might not actually be like that. What it's actually really like, who really knows?
Yeah.
But we have, you know, we're earthbound. We're in physical bodies, and so we have our experiences. So maybe this is why some people experience it like a physical library, because then they can relate to it.
How did you experience it when you saw it?
It was more like a library, and there was a guide that was like almost like a librarian. Oh, so I kind of did see it more like physically, like it was like more like a traditional librry. That was
a lot of books there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
infinite number of books.
Yeah, and then opening a book, and then the book was a way to access a past life. So then I ended up in that past life, seeing the past life.
Okay.
So you can access past lives from this, but you're kind of you're accessing them from a different place, really. But you can still experience them. You can still then go into a past life regression as you normally would, and then come back to that place. So there's always in and out points where you can move. And then you asked me.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, you asked me about the life selection.
Yes, that's it. That's something people report, isn't it?
Life selection.
Life selecting. Yeah. Why did we? What are their experiences of why they? What were they told, and why did they? I mean, could they choose? Could they say, "Oh, I don't want that life. I want to go into that life," or do they have to go down that life path?
Okay, so in my experience, there's not really any coercion. Not from what I've heard or experienced, where they're coerced into, okay, you have to do this one, but it can be strong suggestion.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It can be strongly suggested.
Right. Because some lives are horrible, aren't they? Some lives are very good, and some lives really don't want that map, you know.
Yeah.
Some lives are only for 1 minute, and some lives are for 100 years.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the time, some souls are told, no, this is what you're to do next. So
it'll be an experience or a lesson, or getting out of a lesson.
They might not have the experience or knowledge to make their own choice
at the time. Okay, so
so for younger souls or less experienced souls, more like children, it's like, okay, what do I do next? This is where you're to go now. So, you know, until a certain level, perhaps, and then there's more engagement. You know, this is speculation, really. I'm speculating a little bit here.
We'll never fully know the full detail of it, but that we think that we're sort of shown this is the way we need to go in order to learn certain lessons or to achieve certain goals.
Yeah.
To have the human experience, because I'll get on to that in a minute. Evolving,
but you can explore your current life in between lives, so you can explore the choosing of your current life, your current body in between lives, because we need to think about the concept of time a little bit here, that in between lives all time is now.
Oh, maybe that's how people see the future.
Yeah. So when you're in the between lives, it's outside of linear time.
So it's not, because time is an earthly thing. It's a universal.
It's not really. You're not really bound by time in the same ways, because you're able to access past lives as if they're actually really happening. You're able to look at the selection of your current body as if you're choosing it now.
It's like Doctor Who.
It's kind of a little bit like time travel. Yeah, kind of a little bit. I mean, it can be described as all time is now. So all time is now. And this might explain, you mentioned this might explain how premonition works, because all time is now. So you're not bound by time in the same way. I've had a similar experience years ago.
It's on the 2D flat and it's projected. Well, that's what is it? Stephen Hawking said, or physicists have said, it's the universe is a 2D cache store, and then we live in the holographic projection.
Yeah, so
and there's multiverses as well, which is little parallels. That's the turning points.
I mean, I had a similar experience years and years ago when I used to do a lot of meditation, crazy amounts of meditation, and I had the experience of deja vu for a whole day.
That's interesting.
It lasted the whole day, and I got an understanding about what it was. It was almost like a part of my consciousness was outside of linear time. So it was seeing, it's difficult to explain it.
That's what that is. So you're re-experiencing, but it's all,
I'm outside of linear time. My consciousness is outside of linear time. I don't necessarily know what's going to happen in the future, but we know deja vu. It's like, deja vu is like Oh, I've experienced this before. This is I've done before.
Familiarity.
Familiar, yeah. So it's almost like, yeah. So that's so I think it's important to understand that in between lives, you're not bound by linear time in the same way. That's why you can access past lives. I mean, there's a whole thing about future lives as well. I've not really explored future lives, but some people do explore future lives.
Well, you could do that in hypnosis. I think you go into they can create a new life, but that isn't necessarily a future life. It's just a life they can create, and that's part of therapy.
Yeah, you create a new identity. I mean, it's a similar idea, but it's not something I've explored.
Future lives, that's something to do next.
Well, that could be, yeah.
Wouldn't be a regression though, would it? What would it be? A future life?
Progression.
Premonition. Progression. Future life progressions. Your new sideline. Okay.
Maybe.
Stuff. Okay, that's great.
We can't get off life between lives without talking about the meetings with the masters, though.
Oh, sure. Yes. Is that
because that is the most important.
Is that beings of light, or is that masters different from beings of light? The ascended masters, they're different. Are they the same as beings of light, or are they different entities?
Well, I'm gonna class them all as. I mean, we could call them ascended masters.
Yeah, I call it ascended masters.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if there's a difference between beings of light or ascended masters.
They've finished their lives on Earth, and that was the last question. But it was about how do we come into completion.
Okay.
So you could talk about that in the masters.
Okay, so my experience, I mean, it was incredibly profound. So when I experienced life between lives, it was almost like going into a kind of council chamber, and I was aware of a group. I mean, I didn't really get any distinct visual images. Some people get very distinct visual images where they see, they might see symbols about or they might see certain things that they're wearing or colors. So some people will get that. You can go into a lot of detail with this and specifically ask about color. Some people will see them as light, but they might have different colors. I mean, Michael Newton mapped out all this when he did a lot of his regressions into this by asking about different colors of the masters. And the meaning of different colors, and you can find this out with yourself as well in between lives by getting yourself to look, okay, what color is your aura, and then you can get information about where you are on the kind of level of advancement by the color. But that's not something I've explored that much. But the meeting with the masters is an opportunity to kind of find out how you're progressing in this life, and to ask questions about, and I think you asked about key points in your life as well earlier on, because sometimes you can overlook those key points, what those key points in your life were, and the masters can give you an overview, can get you to look back at see those, or they can discuss how well you're doing, or what actually you're here for, your deeper purpose for being here. It could be to learn certain things. Could be, you might, it's different for different people. Mine was about choices, about discovering the multitude of choices that you can have in this lifetime. In this lifetime, I have a lot of choices about what I can choose to do. In a past life, that may not have been the case. I might have been very limited. Okay. So I might have had no choice. I might have just had, this is what you have to do. You just do one thing and that's it. But now in this life, it's the opposite. I now have a multitude of choices.
So not everyone gets, so the choices are mapped, but not everyone gets them in their lives, depending on their lives, No.
I mean, you might have some person in terms of, I mean, in terms of what you do in your life. I mean, I've done kind of quite lots of different jobs, for example. So I've got the experience of doing lots of different jobs, so explored different things. So I've kind of, in this life, I felt like I've had opportunity to choose what I want to do. But I may not have had that in the past. In a past life, I might have just been a cleaner, you know, and that was it. It might have been a very simple life. There was no choice. It was just, this is what you do. So there's polarity of different things between lifetimes, and then discovering, okay, so about then making decisions. Okay, so if you have a lot of choices, you then learn about, okay, how do you make decisions? Good decisions, bad decisions. So there's a whole thing to explore there about decision making decisions, and then looking back on decisions. Oh, was that a good decision or a bad decision? You know, so that the whole thing can then come into, you know, you can think, oh, that was a bad decision.
So is that, depending on what the decisions are, they're both avenues are mapped. You could have gone either way in each decision, and so that means that there's parallels going on. That's all right. Found it for her. There's parallels going on. You can choose left or right. It's fascinating. The last question is, why do we reincarnate, and how can we ascend so we stop needing to go back to Earth and keep repeating this reincarnation cycle? What can we do? I personally am on my last life. I won't come back again. I'm that's it.
Wow.
But how do we, I don't know what the answer is fully, but I think the answer is we've got a lot to learn. Okay. We've all got a lot to learn. And we have to learn as much as we're sent here to learn as much as possible, but we can't learn it all in one lifetime. Evolve. Yeah. And do we get a set amount of lives to learn that? I think that's Matt, give or take 1 or 2. We'll have the option to, because I think my last life I was supposed to. I mean, maybe it is Matt. Maybe it's Matt. We get a certain amount of lives and then we ascend. Yeah. So we can't. We just got to follow what we're on. I don't know the answer to that question, but I don't know the. How can we stop? Some people are in repeat. Yeah. How do they get out of the repeat? Groundhog Day of reincarnation. You know, they're not going places, or what can they do? Or is that quite complex? Is it lots of therapies and things they can do? Well, I mean, they might not necessarily go to therapy if it's to do with, I mean, a very common Groundhog Day thing is karmic relationships, isn't it? Yeah. So people might end up in some kind of marriage that's destructive, and ends up in destruction where they die, and then they might repeat that. Or a job situation or family situation. So that keeps us bound to this pattern. So it's when we can grow from that. Yeah. We then don't need to come back and have an earthly experience. But you have to bear in mind, we're not alone. So we're not sent here alone to just learn these lessons and then hopefully learn what we need to learn and escape these cycles. We're sent help in many different ways to remind us or offer us the skills to eventually get out of those, because people get stuck in these things because they don't have the skills to get out of them. They don't have it could be knowledge, or attributes, or it could be emotional states. So they don't necessarily have all of those things in order to be able to get out of those situations. So people could be in their life. They could be sent people, part of their soul group. Okay. You know, in between lives, everything's assessed. Okay,
didn't really work out in that past life. You still did what you did. Okay, so how can we next time help you get out of it? Well, okay, this time I'll come and intervene, and I'll give you this information. Or so there's help. So eventually, you know, they will evolve out of it. I don't know how long it takes.
Okay.
You know, I mean, there could be, you know, there could,
million
you know,
years.
some people are stubborn, you know.
Yeah, okay.
But eventually, you know, I think you just have to have faith that eventually those cycles will start to break by them acquiring new skills, or, you know, but you just got to remember that we don't come here alone. We come here with friends and family that are sent to us, and also we've got spiritual help as well. We have spirit guides that give us, you know, how can that come? Someone might just wake up one morning with the thoughts in their head, you know. So where did that thought come from that makes them think differently? It could be from a spirit guide that is able to give them a little bit of information that might help them to break out of those cycles.
Okay, so we could complete the cycle at any time. And is Earth quite a lower vibration compared to other worlds? Is you can feel joy in other higher vibrations on Earth, but it is quite heavy, isn't it, compared to?
It's a hard place, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard. So it's heavy.
Earth is tough.
A lesson learning, but it's also to come out of that and feel joy as well, and happiness, and impart that to others and help others. And then maybe we complete our cycle and go.
Yeah.
Don't have to come back.
I mean, it depends what, I mean, because obviously there are tasks that we do earthbound, but also there are tasks we do when we're not earthbound. You know, we might have, you know, we may spend long periods of time between lifetimes doing other kind of work, other kind of spiritual work in the spiritual realm.
Okay. Earth's the testing place, isn't it? It's the testing and the learning. It's the school.
Yeah, it could very well be.
School of life.
So suppose someone's in training to be a guide, a spirit guide. Then they might have to learn to be a teacher in this life for several lifetimes, teaching in different ways. They have to obviously learn compassion. They have to learn empathy. There's a lot of things that need to be learned in order to be a spirit guide, for example. How long does that take? It's going to take several lifetimes, I would think. Michael Newton mapped out quite a lot of these, the different kind of things that people do that we might do in the spirit realm. You know, being a guide, working in creation,
helping
librarian,
helping people cross over, helping people cross over. Also, spirit hospital, healing them when they're
there's also the animals, working with people that, you know, spirit guides that work specifically with animals. So there could be a whole realm of things that we can do up there that we're in training for here.
Oh, thank you so much, James Quinn, for doing this fascinating podcast today. It was great to have you on. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
So this has been Ascension Podcast. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, it's bye for now. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.